What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the channel, and we're here for another book review. So today we are doing I don't know what number book it is because the series is kind of confusing, but we're doing Season of Storms, one of the books in the Witcher series by Andrzej Sapkowski. So I figured there's no better time to do it with season 2 of the Netflix show coming out, and just felt like if I was going to read it, I'm going to read it now and kind of get myself ramped and revved up for the show. And this book has definitely interested me even more in reading the series. And I'll get more into that in a little while. So, I will say there will be minor spoilers ahead for this book. It's mainly one plot arc regarding when Geralt is contracted to hunt a demon. So if you don't want to hear that, I will give you again a warning later in the video before I do it, so just be aware of that. Alright, so the plot, luckily for me, is pretty easy. Well, I should probably get into a little bit where this book's located in the series. So this is around the same time as the 2 short story collections. So I believe that's Blood of Elves, which I have not read. Probably the next one I read, and Last Wish, and then this one. All happened before the mainline Witcher series. So it's kind of in that realm. And from what I've read, this is kind of an optional book. Like, it's not required reading to get into the mainline Witcher series, whereas a lot of people say you need to read the other 2. So this is kind of a good book to get a feel, kind of get used to some of the characters, kind of see if this is kind of the style of writing and everything and the story for you. So the plot of this book is that Geralt of Rivia, the famed Witcher, has been framed for a crime that he did not commit. And while he's going through the process of the trial and everything, his famed and coveted Witcher swords are stolen. And he has to go through to any lengths to get them back, because a season of storms is approaching, and who knows what it'll bring with it. So it kind of goes from there. So like I said, it starts with that. He gets framed, and then during the trial he gets stolen, and then the story kind of progresses from there. So we'll get into the cons, which I think there are few and far between. I can only come up with 2 cons for this book. And honestly, the first is going to be that I feel like, I don't know if there's a technical word for this, but kind of that drop-in effect. So The Witcher is a large series, especially at this point. And I believe this book was written after every other book in the series. So, because I think it was published in 2013, whereas the other were in like the 90s. So there's a pretty big gap. And everybody, I assume at this point that this was published, knew the story and knew the characters and everything they needed to know. So this kind of feels like you just get dropped into a world, especially as this is only my second Witcher novel. You kind of get dropped in the world. You're expected to know things, and you just kind of have to figure it out along the way. Like, there's a lot of times I was like, who are these people? Like, why are we here? Like, what's going on? Like, when is this? Like, there's a lot of times I was quite confused, but I feel like that's just kind of like a fantasy genre thing. And it falls more on me for just being inexperienced with this type of writing and this style of storytelling. So I take that con a lot more on myself than I put it on the book. Like I said, I'm just inexperienced in the genre and inexperienced in the series as well. So for a lot of people though, especially if you've never read any of the Witcher books, you've never read a lot of fantasy like myself, then I would say make sure you take your time. Make sure you understand that you're going to ask these questions. I feel like anyone getting into this style of genre is going to have these same issues with any series that they read. I felt the same way about Lord of the Rings. But it's something you just got to keep reading. The payoff is worth it. You'll figure it out. You'll get there. Just take your time and go. The next con is that the plot, like the main plot of the swords, at least in my opinion, doesn't feel like it's really the main thing of the book. Like, I feel like this is just, again, like a collection of stories that are loosely tied together from one meta calls of him losing his swords. It doesn't feel like there's like a whole lot of plot progression. Like, that he goes, loses a sword. He follows one lead, and then from there, the events kind of just happen because these things were set in motion. It doesn't feel like it's step, step, step. It feels, especially like even in the book, like he finds out a location of potentially the swords, but he has to wait till a specific time. So he just does things up until that point. And that's kind of the feel you get for this book. I don't know. It's something that threw me off, and I get that these books, especially like the Witcher series, from what I've heard and what I've read about the others say about it, is that it's a very character-driven series. So that main plot isn't super important in this, and it's more about the story of the characters and the relationships that form and stuff. All right, enough of the cons. Let's get into the pros, of which I thought this book had plenty. So first off, I gotta go with the dry humor. I love the humor in this book because Sapkowski does such an excellent job writing dialogue. It feels natural. It doesn't feel like anything's like outlandish or like pushed on you as humor, like trying to make you laugh. It was the equivalent that you would laugh in like overhearing a conversation. And I just think that makes the characters in this book feel so much more real. And that just dry humor, and like then they can flip on a switch and talk like in a very serious manner. And I love the way the dialogue's written, but the dry humor shines for me in as far as the dialogue goes. The next thing I'd say is that the action. I've personally not read many books that are good at describing action and are good at driving it. This book, it crushed it. There's a few fight sequences. I mean, I'd expect a book about a monster hunter to have good fighting in it, well-written fighting, but for me, this is a first. I was like blown away, honestly, with how good the fighting sequences in it were, and the action and overall just flow of it. Like, it felt good to read, which is not something I get a lot. I've read a lot of books that have like forced action that feel clunky, or that'll just like kind of describe action like and zoom out doing it. But this one really, like, it hones in, like it leaves nothing to the imagination. Like, you know exactly what's happening, and you really feel like you can visualize it. I know for me that's a big one, being able to visualize that action, and this book made it so easy, which is a huge pro for this book, because it's done something that not many other books, at least in my opinion, or I should say books I've read, that have great action. And real quick, if you have any other books that have action as well as the Witcher books written, let me know, because I want to read them. I've heard a few John Gwynne books, and that Malazan, Book of the Fallen, have some great action sequences. But other than those, if you guys got any recommendations, let me know down below, because I would love to check more well-written action sequences out. All right, the next is that, so the threads that get weaved in this book tie together super well. Like I said earlier, one of the cons was that it didn't feel like anything was pushing the narrative forward, and that these events and sequences were happening, and they just kind of happened at random. Well, they tie together and package very nicely along with the main plot of the book. As like little as it plays, these things just kind of weave itself together and make a great story that feels complete. And maybe this is just me as an eagerness for the series and the Witcher content in general right now, that I'm just overlooking it and my eagerness is blinding me. But I don't think there's that many loose threads in this book, and that was awesome to see, that kind of a complete story that's not, I shouldn't say started here, but most of it started here and ended here, along with some big overarching themes tied into it about like the whole relationship with Geralt and Yennefer, and how those events that have happened in previous books kind of get woven into it, and like these big events that happen like at a character level and like societal level kind of shaped and impact and everything in this book. And I think those threads just, they tie together so nicely that by the time you're finishing up with the book, it's just a nice, neat little package. And And I'd say one of the last big ones is the characters. Sapkowski, he's outstanding in character writing and character development. He writes characters, like I said, he's great at dialogue because he's great at characters, or vice versa, however you want to frame that. But for me, his characters come to life and they feel great on the page. They feel great to read. Geralt and Dandelion are one of my favorite duos that I've read, just because I love seeing their dynamics and seeing how they interact. And that's where so much of that dry humor that I love comes from. And just the way these two talk to each other. And like, you can feel their care for each other in it. And I really enjoy reading that. Also, Garrett, just as a main character, is excellent. I feel like he's so deep of a character, and like he's got so much going on internally that you get to read about. Like his struggle with doing what's right and wrong, like with his Witcher code and everything throughout this book, at least. I loved getting to read that and kind of getting to see the internal battles that he goes through and the feelings that he has. Like, they feel like human emotions. They don't feel like these over-the-top theatrical emotions that I feel like a lot of other books will push out and just kind of create like dramatic emotion. These feel very human. They feel very mundane emotions that like in a real world people would feel. And that for me is a big one. Also, like the Aguara as a character, I loved that character. Lita Ned, I think it's Lita Ned. Excuse me if I said that wrong. But so those two are such mysterious characters, and like what they're capable of, what their true intentions are. I just think they're excellent characters. And like I said, anytime you add a mysterious element that doesn't get fully explained to a character, I'm gonna fall in love with it. And those two, for some reason, they just captivated me because they're just so mysterious. Especially the Aguara. Doesn't play a huge role in the story, but when it's in there, it's just, you gotta know more. You just gotta know more. And that's how I felt. And then we move on to the psychopaths in the book. And this is kind of where I said spoilers ahead, so beware if you don't want these spoilers. One specific character, the other one I don't know enough about the Witcher series to know if this is a spoiler. But so I'll go into the first one. Brienne, the guy who was a failed Witcher from a group known as the Cats, which I had never heard of until this book. So these failed Witchers are kind of psychopaths, and they have no code. They're just hired assassins. But just getting to see Brienne and how he interacts with Geralt, who he knows and has crossed paths with, and it's just such an exciting piece of the book that I was not expecting when it happened, and it was just so much more for me to enjoy. And lastly, like I said, this is the spoiler character, Daggerland, or Duggerland. I'm not 100% sure how you're supposed to say it, but I'll say Daggerland. Him as like his character as the sorcerer who's kind of experimenting on humans and trying to perfect them, and I love that arc. Like, he's doing it like in the name of science, but he's in his own way. He's just sick and deranged and just wants to experiment on people, and that's just so cool to me. I love that arc. I love that he's creating mutated monsters for like sale, and then his few henchmen are excellent. But him, and when he does that monologue when he captures Geralt, I love that. I love a villain monologue. I love to hear them talk. I love to hear them boast. I love to hear them explain themselves and try to justify their actions. But when it comes to Daggerland, he's just something. He's so crazy that you love him as a character. You can't help but love him. All right, so final thoughts on this book. Huge recommend. I loved this book. So the books in the Witcher series are 2 for 2 for me now, and I can't wait to get into more of them. This book has rekindled a lot of my fire for The Witcher. Because of it, I'm in the process of buying the rest of the series of The Witcher books. I rewatched the first season of The Witcher just because I'm so excited for this Friday, the second season, which I'm going to binge that night and probably watch it again the next day or that following weekend because I'm just so excited and consumed with it right now. And hell, I'm even giving the Witcher series, the video games, another try. So I'm returning to the third one and I'm gonna give it another shot. And who knows, I might finish it this time. We'll see. But like I said, gotta give this book specifically and the Witcher series a huge recommend. And I hope you have either checked it out or you plan on checking it out, because let me tell you, it's an epic world, epic characters who I'm sure you can find someone that you're going to fall in love with and just follow them through and just watch as their story unfolds. All right, y'all, that's all I got for you. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think. Have you read the books? Do you want to read the books? If you have, or if you're gonna, what do you think? Do you think? Also, just let me know what you think. I switched the setup here in my locale, filming location. I'm just trying to find what works, so let me know down below if you like this look, if you like the old look, if you think there's something I need to add, something I need to change up. Just give me some feedback. I'm always down for feedback. Love to hear what you guys got to say. But until next time, all I got to say is stay reading, y'all.